It's 2 o'clock time now for Inside the Courtroom, the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial wrap. I'm Linda Mnisi. Always a pleasure to have you with us. In fact, this is the Mother's Day edition of the Meyiwa trial wrap. I don't know if there's anything of that sort or if it even makes sense. But of course, it's been a productive week in the trial. 2 witnesses to testify in defense of the alleged intruder, Bongani Ntanzi. And as always, we do have our poll question. And this week, we want you to tell us whether or not you think that these witnesses assisted the alleged intruder in his testimony. We've got options for you. 1, yes, he brought solid witnesses. 2, no, they didn't help. Or 3, you're just simply waiting to hear from the rest of his witnesses. Scan the QR code on your screen to start voting on that poll question. But also, as you know, we do have, that WhatsApp line where you can send through your messages, including videos. We'll play them throughout the program. But first, let's get the show on the road.
I want to find out each and everything that you were asked about Danzi in that boardroom. And were you asked to comment on that?
I asked them a question to say, when did he do that? Because since he finished school, he never had a time where he was not doing anything, because he started working at the gold mine and I was the one that called him to come.
And what was the response of the questioners to you, to your response?
They did not continue with their questioning. They now went to say they are now taking a statement, and they started asking me questions.
All right, so the first witness to take the stand this week was Mandlenkosi Zondo, an associate, former colleague, as well as dance group leader. His testimony, centered around a statement which he was allegedly threatened by the lead investigator, Brigadier Bongani Ntanzi, to sign.
When he handed that document to you and you appended your signature in the manner that you said you did, were you confirming the truthfulness of that, the contents of that document?
When they were handing me this document, I said to Ntanzi, I can see this document, the page is full, and I don't think that it is what I said. And then his response was that, no, what happened is that when we ask you a question and you say you know Danzi, we actually write the whole explanation.
All right, as always, we do have guests in the studio who help us unpack the week's evidence. And for now, I'm joined by legal analyst and a good friend of the show, Beiseni. Beiseni, I want us to first start by talking about, the testimony of this witness and, how it flows. Before we even get into the cross-examination, this is a witness who tells the court about his arrest, the alleged assault that he had to endure, ultimately leading to him deposing this particular statement. It seems there is somewhat of a pattern that the defense is building when it comes to allegations of assault, because he's not the first witness to talk about the assault.
Yes, good afternoon, Linda, and as well as your viewers at home. In fact, you are correct when you say the defense is trying just to build a pattern. And this pattern, I think they are trying to build it insofar as the confessions, because they accuse number 1 and 2, to be precisely. They allege that they were tortured and they were assaulted here. And for that reason, the defense elected just to bring other witnesses who they think they can come and just, they testify also about being tortured and assaulted. But remember, this is an issue concerning each and every individual. It doesn't necessarily mean that if then somebody alleges that also he was assaulted at some point, then it's therefore the second person also get assaulted. But what is maybe the point that they are trying to prove is credibility insofar as the investigators, unfortunately here they are talking about Mabena, who can't come and explain himself insofar as the assault. Just the gentleman who was testifying, he said he was assaulted by Mabena, if I'm not mistaken. And what is very strange is that he was not arrested. Well, he might have been detained, as he is saying, when taken for questioning. But there is no any evidence that is supporting the allegation, just like after the assault, this is what I have done, right? Maybe I consulted the doctor, maybe I went to any nearest police station and completed the J88 and opened a case against this because there is absolutely no justification why I was assaulted. But nonetheless, even the reason of him being assaulted, you don't find it. Why were you assaulted? Because in the middle of the testimony, he said they parked the car somewhere and then they started to assault him. To solicit what? He does not tell us. At least if then he was saying, well, they park a car at a particular area and then they say they started to assault me because I didn't want to tell them A, B, Z, and Y. Unfortunately, that's not the case. He said they just assaulted me, took me, a plastic and stuff there off. That's what he said. He does not say the reason why he was assaulted by that time. That is the unfortunate part.
Yeah, and of course, as you know by now, we do have in studio Itu Mukwena, who's also a friend of the show, has been helping us navigate this evidence. Itu, thank you very much for joining us. Bongiseni and I were just reflecting on the issue around the pattern in the allegations of assault, but also there's another pattern, right, that appears to being drawn by the defense witnesses, and that is of the arrest and not appearing in court. This witness says, well, I was not taken to court. In fact, they bought me KFC, which I threw out the window.
Thank you for having me back. I'm back, Maragochae. I'm back. Happy Mother's Day to everybody at home. Yeah. A very interesting pattern that these witnesses are coming with, specifically the witnesses for the defense. If you look at Bab Zungu Senior's testimony and you look at Zondo's testimony, I'm very, very intrigued by, and also Makosonke, I believe, because Makosonke also says that he was asked for a bribe for fingerprints, and we don't know what these fingerprints are. Zondo also says he was arrested. He says he can read, but he was not able to read his charge sheet. It's the inmate who told him that he was arrested. And Ramsepele says that he does not have enough information to tell the court whether this man was charged or not. And of course, Baloyi says, well, I've been on this case for long enough to tell you that he was not part of the people who were charged. So I don't know. Also, the fact that the defense keeps bringing witnesses that were supposed to be the state's witnesses, and they are now saying they're trying to separate or distance themselves from the statement that they had given the state, and now saying that they were being tortured. I think, yes, Judge Rata needs to call the people that have been accused of torture for the court, not for the state, because the state has not asked for for those witnesses. It's the court who needs to hear from them, because it cannot make a decision based on one view. They're going to have to hear what these policemen, and unfortunately, they have pointed at a policeman who's no longer alive. Yeah. Most of them are saying that we were tortured by this man, but he's not alive anymore, so he cannot. And Danzi has now also changed his version from Kininda to a man who's not alive. Yeah. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, and I want to come back to you, Bongiseni. You know, when it comes to the issue of the statement, Bab Zondo tells the court that, he interacted with Kininda, gave him the details around how he possibly knows some of the accused. Kininda refused to have him read the statement back, but he was then threatened to sign that particular statement. Now, I want to understand what the court is supposed to take from that statement in relation to the statement, right, or the testimony in relation to the statement, because the defense did not take him through the statement, right? But it was the state that took him through the statement. So in relation to what the defense is trying to get at with the statement, should the court be looking at just the allegations of assault and the circumstances around the statement, or should be focusing on the contents and the value that the statement or the contents of the statement bring to the trial?
You see, Linda, the statement that is before court for the gentleman who testify, as much as when the state elected to use the statement, it's not like the state want to rely on the statement or to prove a particular fact. But in terms of the law, you know, when somebody has deposed to a statement and it has to be cross-examined about any evidence in relation to, then the state was just cross-examining this guy. The content of the statement, yes, it is there. And it's evidence now because the statement at some point it has been admitted being an exhibit and happens to be evidence before court. The court can rely on this statement as well as this testimony of the guy because it's evidence. The court has to take all evidence holistically. So whether then the accused person has distanced himself from the statement, it's something else, because you remember that during the proceedings last week, Mr. Mnisi also asked a question from the court that I still want to find out and understand what is the status of the statement, because was under the impression that the statement, maybe the court is going to say this is a provisionally admitted statement, which is not the case. It's just a statement that has been admitted as evidence before the court. As to whether this accused person has distanced himself from it, remember the court has all invoked the section 186 that they are going to call Kininda, who then took the statement. Then Kininda, let's say, come and confirm that he took the statement from the guy, because the guy, in terms of his denial, maybe it was 90% the denial in this. In fact, the content of the statement, 90% of it, he admits that the information was coming from him. But here's the problem. He only says the information was coming from him, but he didn't give it to Kininda. He gave it to the other police. We don't know how then eventually the information happens to be in the statement, because he does not even deny sitting down and making a statement before Kininda. And the information, he knows it, but he said he didn't give it to Kininda, but he gave it to the other police. So then the court will have to make a fact finding as to whether Kininda, indeed in this state, he took a statement. This is a conversation that took place between yourself and the guy. Did you know about this content, which is on paragraph A, B, Z, and Y? Then Kininda, if he does not know. Under these circumstances, the guy has already admitted that the information is from him, but he's not the one who relayed to Kininda. It might be relayed to by Mabena or Mhane. Yeah. So you only left with a threat just to infer, to say, no, there could be no any other person other than you relaying this information to Kininda.
Yeah, and I want to stay with you, Bongani, because I want to ask you about the conversation, before the state went into the statement itself around the proving of the statement. This witness does not dispute, that he gave details to Kininda, which formed a statement. He even signed it, confirms his signature. Now, the entire process of proving that statement, help us legally to understand why it was necessary for the defense to want to ask the state to prove the statement.
No, in terms of the law, before a statement is used in a court of law, it has to be proven. Well, you need to meet the requirements before you use it. Remember, you need to prove, okay, you make a statement, what language were you using, was it interpreted or read back to you, and then did you append the signature, and the signature that is appearing here is that of your signature, and then once this person has agreed to, yes, he made a statement, the contacts or the details there, being the names and the surname are his, and then is his, as well as the signature is his, and the statement was read back to him, and then he understood at the time when the statement was read as being his content, and then that is how you prove your statement. But under these circumstances, we know that he only denied that the statement was read back to him.
Yeah. Quickly, before we take a break, Itu, I want to come to, you know, the one thing that I kept asking myself as I was sitting in that court, right? The willingness to meet the people that were allegedly behind your assault. He says he met them again later and he was subsequently taken to and forced to participate in an ID parade. Your reading of that?
Exactly the same as Babzungu. Like, you were working with the state up until a point where you decided to backtrack. Because if you listen to Zondo during the cross-examination with Dr. Sibanda, he says that we were working together, everything was fine. I was waiting to be called. Why was I not called? Exactly like Babzungu. Why was I not called? So when did the assault happen? If you're working together with these people, they were buying new KFC, everything was fine. At what point did the assault happen? The cross-examination of Mshololo. Mshololo asked, were you tortured when you made the statement? He says, no. Gininda just gave me a look, and I knew what that look meant. You know, so there's no way that sitting there, it doesn't make sense. You can see something went wrong, and nobody's going to tell us what actually went wrong.
Welcome back, and thank you for choosing to stay with us. If you've just joined us, you're watching Inside the Courtroom, the Senzo Mewa Murder Trial Rep with myself, Linda Mnisi. I want to remind you of that poll question before we go into further details. The question there being, have Bongani Ntanzi's two witnesses assisted his case? The first option, yes, he brought solid witnesses. Two, no, didn't help. And of course, the third option being waiting for more. So you're waiting for more witnesses to come. So scan the QR code and keep voting. These are not the final results. These are the results that are trickling in. So make sure that you participate in this poll question. Those results will be announced at the end of the show, but also important to know that only the court can make a credibility finding on the witnesses of Bongani Ntanzi. So this is just you and I having a conversation about what we saw in the court earlier on. All right, let's continue. Mandlekosi Zondo faced cross-examination by the state on his testimony, and throughout his testimony has conceded to not knowing anything about the 26th of October 2014. Now, this is an important day, the day that Senzo Mewa was killed. It's the state's case that Bongani Ntanzi was one of the two men who entered the Khumalo home and tussled with the occupants before the footballer was gunned down. Ntanzi, however, denies this, saying he was in KwaZulu-Natal on that day, where he was to perform two ceremonies. Now, his first witness, Mandlekosi Zondo, who he recruited, or Zondo recruited him rather, to traditional dance, testified under cross-examination about where the areas where the dancers would perform. Now, this also includes from across the Basotho hostel in Vosloorus.
Did I hear you correctly when you said at some stage you attended the sport in Basotho hostel?
Yes, my lord, with regards or attending to the traditional dance, there would be an open space on the side where cars are parked, and then on the side there would be the hostel.
Was it inside the hostel or outside the hostel?
It's outside the hostel on the other side of the road.
Did you also visit the hostel since you were nearby?
Let me explain it like this, maybe the sport would be understood. When you go to the traditional dance, the camp would start on the Saturday, and then the dance itself would be on the Sunday. I would then place them or put them in this particular place, my lord, because there is this belief that if it happens that they come across the opposite sex, females, my lord, then there is no more power, or that energy is no longer there, my lord. And now I want to go specifically to this question that was being asked, my lord.
Yeah.
We would then take the mine transport now, that is the bus itself, my lord. We go to the place itself. When we get there, the guys that take part, my lord, the ones that are wearing uniform, they do not alight out of the bus, or they get out of the bus.
Mr. Jack Buthelezi testified in this court, and I'm just touching on his evidence. I'm not quoting it from the record. And he testified that Mr. Bongani Ntanzi also does for the Fosloras team. What is your comment?
My lord, that has never happened.
All right, I'm still joined by my guest, Itu Mukwena, who's a commentator following the case regularly, as well as Sibongiseni Gunene. Itu, let me start with you. Your thoughts on the issue around Fosloras. Do you believe that this particular witness either contradicts Jack Buthelezi entirely, and which may be a blow to the state, or assists the state in placing Bongani Ntanzi, or at least linking him to the Fosloras hostel?
When it comes to Jack Buthelezi's evidence and this witness, well, particularly, let's speak about the hostel now. I think his response in regards to the dancing, he's made it clear that Danzi was in his team. Danzi was not part of any Fosloras team. But what I was hoping this witness was going to be able to do was remove Danzi from hostel. But he goes and he places Ntanzi at hostel because he says that they would perform by the grounds right opposite the hostel. And Ntanzi said that he's never been to the hostel. So in that regard, yes, he is hurting Ntanzi's case, because last week we spoke about the type of witnesses that Ntanzi needs to bring in order to support his case. At this point, as things stand, Zondo was not able to remove him from the hostel. He's not able to remove him from Fosloras. Yes, he might have put doubt in terms of, did Ntanzi actually dance for a group in Fosloras? Yes, because he says, Ntanzi was in my team. We would fetch Ntanzi. I would take him to Fosloras. But he also overdoes it when he says that he used to keep them in a bus, and he was controlling the bus and nobody would be able to leave that bus. Now, I've listened to Ntanzi testify. No one is going to tell Ntanzi anything. You're not going to tell Ntanzi not to leave a bus, so I don't believe you were able to do that.
Yeah. Let me come to you, Sibongiseni, because, you know, what is interesting about this testimony around Jack Buthelezi, right, is to a certain extent, it appears as though Zondo says similar things that Buthelezi said, right, that they would dance at various places, including the Basotho hostel. Now, the issue that I'm wondering about is, does it now boil down to the issue of credibility between Zondo and Jack Buthelezi? Also, when you consider the evidence that Zondo has given about Buthelezi, I mean, if you take, for example, the fact that Zondo says Jack went to meet Ntanzi, right? He met him, and this is what Ntanzi told him. Ntanzi cried, you know, in regret. But he says that conversation is a conversation that Jack told them when they were in their room. So essentially corroborating perhaps what Jack Buthelezi would have told the court. So again, back to my question, will it then boil down to a question of credibility between Jack Buthelezi as well as Zondo?
I don't think it's something that has to do with credibility between these two witnesses. Yeah. Because if you remember very well, the state, insofar as that evidence of Jack Buthelezi pertaining dancing for Basotho hostel, dancing for a group that is from Fosloras or Basotho hostel, I think the state, the intention was just to say, you know this place and you happen to be at or near this Basotho hostel. Yes, Shoes has denied that Ntanzi was dancing for that group, but he does not deny that Ntanzi knows that particular area happens to be there, because the point that was driven there is that you know this particular area. So insofar as credibility, there's absolutely nothing that it plays on the evidence of Jack Buthelezi, because the evidence of Jack Buthelezi is not limited to the dancing, it's also as to how he knows Danzi. And Shoes confirms that indeed Danzi and Jack Buthelezi knows each other very well. And the person who was communicating with Danzi the most is Jack Buthelezi. Shoes also confirm it. So I don't see any credibility issue insofar as the evidence of Jack Buthelezi, other than being collaborated. It has been collaborated maybe at land as opposed to being attacked by this witness. He does not attack anything. He just confirmed that Basotuni hostel is known.
Yeah, and you know, the issue around the contradictions on Danzi's part, right? The cell phone issue. I did not have my cell phone when I was in custody post my arrest in 16 June 2020, but here's a witness. My family did not know of my arrest until the 13th of July, but here's a witness who says, well, I got a call from his relative who told me that he had been arrested. So that obviously is then a major blow to his confession statement, because one of the things that he raised at that time was that his family did not know where he was. He hadn't bathed, you know, toiletries, etc.
As I said, last week we counted the type of witnesses that Ntanzi is going to need in order for him to strengthen his case. And this witness blew Ntanzi's case. And it's funny because he says that I'm very close to Ntanzi. So I'm saying, oh, okay, cool. This guy is close to Ntanzi. So he must have known Ntanzi was at home, getting married and doing umsebenzi for his child. He need to have known that information. But instead, he comes and he says that, also, I want to know, you are one of the people that was calling Ntanzi while Ntanzi was in prison and Ntanzi didn't have his phone. He doesn't say that, no, I could hear a cop at the end of the phone call. He says, I didn't make those calls. Buthelezi is the one who was making those calls. So there was communication between Danzi's phone and Buthelezi. Well, according to Zondo, he says Buthelezi. Now it's a shift their blame game, right? And most importantly, he tells us that as early as the 19th of June, Ntanzi's family already knew that Ntanzi was already arrested. That is a big thing because Ntanzi says his entire confessions when he was sitting with Cronje, that's the only thing he wanted his family to know, that he was arrested. He wanted to bath and he had not bathed. He wanted to call his family. But now we learn his family already knew. That is honestly paralyzing Ntanzi's case.
Yeah, and I wonder, Sibongiseni, to what extent then, given the evidence that we've heard on the confession statement, the allegations that have been made around the confession statement, assaults and the likes, how this particular important, aspect of it seems to impact Bongani Ntanzi's ability to then have those confession statements thrown out.
For assault, if then we're talking about assault, I don't see the witness who was in court does not even say anything in relation to the assault of Ntanzi when the confession was solicited. Well, you can't then say just because Shoes also mentioned that he was tortured at some point, then therefore the confession was solicited like this. No, that is not how criminal cases operate. You can then try and the modus operandi, but you need to prove it and you need to bring evidence that is tangible, that, okay, this is how they behave and they have behaved here. Because even this allegation that has been made by the other people, and it's just allegation, and looking at the circumstances, they are at liberty that they can also go to any nearest police station or hospital if then they were injured. You see, just like Shoes mentioned that they had some injuries in his hand, which were caused by the cuffs. And then it does not even detail as to how maybe he managed to treat those injuries at some point. He doesn't say anything. You go to Kwabini, when he was in court, he also alleges assault. And he said he consulted the doctor. It was just a statement. And there is no any information which supports such allegation that a doctor was consulted and this is the medical report and this is how the injuries were treated, just to support that indeed this gentleman in proximity on the day wherein he was taken by the police, this is the report which came from the doctor and he consulted the doctor. You don't have that evidence. They just they throw words and leave it like that and think just because he mentioned that he consulted the doctor or he mentioned that he was assaulted, then it has to be taken as a fact that indeed assault has happened. Because assault, we know how to prove assault. You can't just prove assault, which is physical in its nature, by the mere saying that I have been assaulted and then stop there. You can't do that.
Welcome back. This is Inside the Courtroom, the Senzo Mewa murder trial, and I'm Linda Mnisi. Now, let's quickly check in with your poll question and the results that are trickling in. You recall that this week we want to know if you think Danzi's two witnesses were of any assistance to him. 16% of you so far saying yes, these are solid witnesses. 82% of you saying no, didn't help. While 2%, just 2% saying they're waiting for more witnesses. So continue scanning that QR code on your screen and keep those votes coming. Like I indicated earlier, these are not the final results. The final results will be announced at the end of the show, but also these are just your opinions, right? Only the court can make a credibility finding on these witnesses and can determine whether or not their evidence was of help. So, of course, your thoughts can also be shared via our WhatsApp line. That number is on your screen right now. It's 072-110-5584. Get in touch with us via that number. Let me repeat it for you again, 072-110-5584. We want to hear your views on this particular matter, and Danzi's two witnesses taking the stand this past week. So make sure that you engage with us. All right, so let's move on to the WhatsApp messages right now. Griffith Zabala says, "Hi Linda, the defense is at sea. The witnesses that they are calling are of no help to Danzi." So that is a view from our WhatsApp line. Make sure that you keep them coming through that number that we shared with you earlier on, and we'll make sure to read them as the show progresses. All right, so the testimony of Beiseni Danzi, this is the brother of the alleged intruder Bongani Ntanzi, centers around a sibling rivalry between his brothers, Bongani Ntanzi, and another unnamed brother. Now, the threats that allegedly came out of that feud landed on a police statement, giving investigators a breakthrough. Now, it's alleged that Beiseni Ntanzi was the source to the deponent of that statement, but he took the stand on Thursday and denied the claims.
In the statement, it attributes this other information to you, which is critical, that your other brother told you that the brother now that was fighting or arguing with Mafika tells you that I would not fight Mafika, but I would rather report him to the police for the murder of Senzo Mewa. Did you have any conversation of this nature?
No, I do not. I'm not aware of such a conversation.
No.
So Absalom Zungu, a relative to the Danzi brothers, is the alleged opponent of the statement, but disputed it, even challenging the signature on the document.
Now, specifically regarding the pertinent allegations made against your name in the statement, did you ever have a conversation with Mr. Absalom Zungu about an argument between a brother of Bongani Ntanzi and Bongani Ntanzi himself?
No.
Do you know anything about a fight between another Ntanzi brother, because it's just a statement that says another Ntanzi brother, no name is attached there too. So do you know of a fight between another Ntanzi brother and Bongani Ntanzi himself?
No, I do not.
Now, the state previously argued that this statement amounted to triple hearsay and did not rely on it in court proceedings. They now put to Beiseni that his testimony came late in the day and that the ship has sailed.
So the point that we want to put across to you, Mr. Ntanzi, is that the ship has sailed. Your denials are irrelevant because the police have acted on the basis of the information that they've received and arrested the accused.
Yeah.
As the court places, my lord, this witness is a lay person.
Hello?
This is a lay witness. This question is argumentative. That is what Mr. Baloyi should address his lordship at the end of the case. How this witness is going to comment on the lateness of his refusals or whatever it is alleged that he's done, this witness cannot answer to that matter. Is the conclusion?
Malak, you put it to the witness that his evidence is irrelevant, and we are underscoring that point as to why we say his evidence is relevant. And, I think it's only fair that he should be invited to comment on this proposition that we are positing to him.
All right, let's continue the conversation with my guests, Itu Mokoena as well as Bongeseni. Itu, has the ship sailed?
The ship sailed long ago. There's nothing that witness could have said in order for anything to have changed. Yes, the police had the information, but that information is not what led to the arrest. They went and they investigated, and based on their investigation, they then made arrests, and confessions were made, and after those confessions, more investigations happened and more arrests happened. So to say this witness had a hand or him telling somebody or Absolute Zungu's statement, it had nothing to do with it. It's irrelevant. It's triple hearsay.
Let me come to you, Bongeseni. I mean, do you agree with what Itu is saying? It's triple hearsay. But also, when it comes to Bongeseni's testimony, help us understand why it was important for the defense to call him. How are they trying to boost the defense, on Danzi's defense, with bringing this witness who is disputing the evidence or the allegation of that statement?
I think the defense, what is trying to do here, remember, I think when Gininda was in court, Mr. Ramsipile is the one who then elected to use the statement, because Gininda being the investigation officer and testifying about the reason why he arrested accused number 1 and 2, just to be precisely at that time. And then Ramsipile took the statement and read the statement of Zungu Senior and said, do you see that in this statement, Zungu Senior is referring to other people, and it is hearsay, the information that he has. And you want to tell you that, or to tell this court that we are going to call Beiseni, and Beiseni is going to come and refute the content wherein in the statement he has been referred to that it was heard from him, right? So by the look of things, that the defense is trying to collaborate that thing, that to say, mind you, that Zungu Senior happened to come now under the account of defense, and he testified that he does not know the content of the statement, in fact, the signature and stuff thereof. So then now cementing it with the evidence of Beiseni coming and said, yes, I also don't know anything insofar as that information. So what they are trying to do is to collaborate that issue. But the unfortunate part about that evidence, let's say for argument's sake, Beiseni does not know about this, and Zungu Senior at some point now is jumping around. But you cannot deny that accused number 1 and 2 get arrested. You see, as to how they get arrested, then it's no longer becoming a match factor, because these 2 people who then get arrested themselves, according to the investigation officer at the investigation level, they confirm their involvement in the case. So that nullifies now to go and talk to Beiseni as the investigation officer to find out, or to investigate Beiseni. When Beiseni, did you have any conversation like this and this? Because these said person that are being referred in the statement, they've already implicated themselves. It will be just a waste of time to go to. Why will you go to Beiseni when somebody has already implicated himself? You're just wasting your time.
And the one thing that I know certainly I was excited about when Beiseni took the stand was the issue around Ntanzi's alibi, because we can have a conversation about anything and everything. We can go to and fro, back, pull the docket and look at it upside down. But ultimately, at the heart of this case is where Bongani Ntanzi was. The state has put their case. whatever you make of it, they say, we know, we are saying you were there. He says, I was not there. And the one person that I was hoping would corroborate the idea of a lobola in these ceremonies is Beiseni. You know, although perhaps you may not remember the dates, but you would know your brother was, you know, paying dowry, lobola. You would know those little details.
Exactly, Linda. I was excited for Ntanzi's brother. I thought, okay, here we go. We're going to hear something about Ntanzi's alibi. But now when this witness is led, nothing is mentioned on Ntanzi's whereabouts on the 26th of October. For me, that was really, really suspicious for me. Ramsipela, why are you not going there with this witness? I mean, this is a family member. Ntanzi would, even if he wasn't there, he probably knows what has happened. Why are you not leading him there? And obviously, the state is not going to touch terrains that were not touched. They did not mention anything to him about this, but I was shocked that here is somebody so close to Ntanzi, your brother, but knows nothing. And this is your brother from your dad's side. You're bringing a makoti for him because this is your older brother. Surely he should know about this makoti. And who is the name of this makoti? At least just give us the name of the makoti.
So Bongani, you know, he's not led either in evidence in chief. The state also does not go through it. I mean, how do you read that the state also did not touch on this issue with somebody who may bear knowledge, you know, somebody who may take the court into his confidence about what he knows about those details? Is the state not wanting to do the work for the defense?
Yes, Linda, you see, there's no need for the state to go there. It's a dangerous terrain. Let's say maybe they go there and this gentleman start to testify about something like proving an alibi or something thereof, in fact, with something that we don't know whether it's there. But nonetheless, we know that Ramsipile, even at the time when he was leading Danzi in examination in chief, he never let Danzi about the alibi of being at home, lobola stuff, all those things. These issues only arose from the other colleagues when they were just cross-examining Ntanzi as well as the state. So it simply means it's not the plan, maybe from Ramsipile, whatever what you know, which we don't. And he does not want to go to the terrain of the lobola issue. He only happens to ask Ntanzi about it. I think that is under re-examination, and he didn't go into detail in so far as even with the Capitec and the lobola stuff and the ceremonies. He just brushes off and then he left it like this. I don't know what, for whatsoever reason, why he does not go to this issue of the alibi of Sandizo, because this witness, the assumption, in fact, that could be the reasonable assumption one can have, that because being a family member, when he was asked by Dr. Sibanda, the question was very broad. Dr. Sibanda asked him that you cannot assist accused number 2 at all insofar as to his whereabouts on the day in question. Then logically, it simply means that this person, as a person that knows that, no, I can assist him about his whereabouts because I know exactly on this day, this is when is the week wherein we're very busy at home, having some ceremonies, starting with the ritual issue and the lobola. So I know I can assist him, I know his whereabouts, but he said he cannot assist about his whereabouts, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, and it, I mean, the witness ends up being led into this statement of, you know, Zungu Senior, Absalom Zungu, and he, in fact, ends up confirming that Ntanzi has brothers. You know, although the other brother's name is not mentioned in the statement, the inference that, perhaps the court can draw from what he confirms in relation to the statement? Quickly, we have to take a break.
Absolutely. I think what ultimately happened with this witness, even though his evidence was irrelevant, the state ended up using his evidence as corroboration for some of the witnesses that have come forward. Like Zondo. Zondo said he received a call from Danzi's sister and gave us a name, and he confirmed the name when he was testifying. So we do know that Zondo was called by somebody to tell them that Danzi is arrested.
Welcome back. Let's quickly check in with your WhatsApp messages that you've been sending us throughout the program. The first one is from Jablani from Giyani, who says, "Hi, Linda. It's interesting that these two witnesses called by the defense support the state's case. Also, they sound more sympathetic to the accused regarding people coming to give evidence as witnesses. Looks like their testimonies were made up as they went along." So that's a message from Jablani, who's from Giyani. Let's take a look at another message coming in from Favorite, who's all the way in Tembisa. "Hi, Linda. I'm not sure who chooses Ntanzi's witnesses because they are throwing him under the bus. Time is wasted." So that's Favorite, who's coming from Tembisa. Jablani Ngesi says, "Hi, Linda. Those who buy the narrative that these charges are trumped up against the 5 accused must be dreaming, as there is nowhere on earth that such a huge volume of evidence could be cooked." Let's check in with another message from Anonymous, who says, "Hi, Linda. Kunzima good defense. They keep digging the grave for the accused," meaning it's very hard for the defense who keep digging the grave for the accused. Makongo Ntengiseni says, "Good day, Linda. The witness is not helping Danzi." So those are the WhatsApp messages that are coming through from our WhatsApp line that we've been running throughout the show. I want us to continue with our chat with my panel of guests, Itu Mukwena as well as Monguseni Gunene. Itu, I mean, when you look at these two witnesses, both of them cannot help Bongani Ntanzi with at least where he was when this murder occurred. Talk to us about what your highlights have been.
I've always maintained that Ntanzi confessed 3 times, Linda, and I think when Zondo's statement was read, that hearsay evidence that he was giving on his statement, it's exactly what Jack Buthelezi was testifying to before he made the U-turn during his evidence. So for me, yes, definitely Danzi was there with his friends at Kelukumalo's house when this incident happened, and Zondo corroborated that information. So great witness for the state, not so good for Ntanzi. And as Ntanzi's brother, who's so close to Ntanzi, not being able to tell us where Ntanzi was at 2 events that you imagine his elder brother would be at, it just makes it very, very, very impossible to believe that Ntanzi was at home on the 26th of October, given the evidence that has been laid for these 2 witnesses.
And I want to stay with you because I want you to tell us, the expectation going forward. I mean, there are possibilities of Capitec, being called and the subpoenas there, police officers who may still form part of Bongani Ntanzi's witnesses, right? I mean, where do you think the trajectory is going here? Where are we going with Bongani Ntanzi's, testimony or evidence when you look at the possibilities of this bank record coming, or a person from Capitec coming to testify, and those police officers?
Again, I mean, the Capitec statement he should have gotten an alternative statement by now before he let Ntanzi. So for me, that means that statement is not going to prove anything. That person from Capitec is not going to distance themselves from the affidavit that was already provided to the state. There's nothing more they can get from Capitec. So we are actually wasting time, because this statement has been accepted, and if they wanted to challenge it, they were supposed to challenge it as they received that statement. For me, yeah, it's a bit too late for you to bring Capitec, and for you to bring policemen now. You're still not telling us when Danzi was. Those policemen are not going to tell us when Danzi was on the 26th. So we don't know Danzi's alibi, and we're about to close his case, and you're still bringing irrelevant witnesses.
Sibongiseni, your thoughts on these 2 witnesses, and whether or not you think they've assisted Bongani Ntanzi, particularly in the layout of his case and how he's testified in his defense?
Well, the witnesses, I don't think they have had anything insofar as Ntanzi's case is concerned, because we all know that Ntanzi's defense is that he was at home. So witnesses which we are expecting are those who are going to come and cement the alibi. One witness who can come and confirm the alibi and bring some credible and reliable evidence, then the state case will be crumbling. So, but then now there's no one who wants to cement the defense. When they come to court, unfortunately, it's just like Schulz did the same thing like Kwabini and Makosonke, pleading their own case, how they were arrested and what was happening, right? I can't say anything much about the brother because the brother, he was just brought to come and testify in respect of an issue which is irrelevant for the state in its when they were leading their case. They didn't rely to Zungu Senior's evidence in proving the case here. They didn't rely on the statement. Whether he come and refute the content thereof in the statement of Zungu Senior, unfortunately, and that statement, it was not even made by the said person. It was made by Zungu Senior. It's something that does not even add anything. His denial about the information which Zungu said he had it from him, and Zungu remember that at least if Zungu said Beiseni is going to come and confirm this information, and then Beiseni comes and not confirm the information, then we're going to have a different approach. But under these circumstances, it's something that is just a conversation. Because Zungu Senior was used as an informant, like he gave an information to the police, and the police followed the information, discovered some facts. You can't then now deny the facts. So whether he came and testify about not knowing the content, it's something that cannot take the case anywhere.
Yeah, and lastly, Itu, before we close, I mean, at the beginning of the show, I was reflecting on how it's Mother's Day, right? And we know that as we discussed the Senzo Mewa murder trial, the one person, at least his mother, is the one person that is waiting for justice. And there's a lot of debate, particularly in the space that you're in, the social media space, as people that watch the case, as people that update the masses on social media about the case. When you think about what today means, you know, and not that you're her spokesperson, but, you know, perhaps from a mother's point of view, when you think about what today means for her in light of where the case is and how far we've gone, what do you possibly think, you know, could be going through her mind?
You know, I understand that Senzo's mother does have a watching brief, so she is following the case. She is following the evidence. I would just say to her, just trust the justice system. We are hearing what actually happened to your son. We are getting to hear his last moments, and you will get the justice that you truly deserve for your son. The rest of South Africa also want the same justice. We truly believe in the state case, and they have shown and proven, to us at least, yes, the judge will make the final ruling, but for now, I'm saying just trust in our justice system.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much, Itu Mokoena, as well as Sibongiseni Gunene, on those inputs, as of course we mark the end of our Mother's Day edition of the Senzo Mewa murder trial. But I want to quickly check in with the poll results as you've been voting throughout the program. 78% of you are saying that Bongani Ntanzi's 2 witnesses have not assisted in his case and did not help. So those are the views that are coming through from that QR code that you as the viewer scanned on the program, throughout the program, and weighed in on. Again, important to point out that only the judge or the court can make a final ruling on these 2 witnesses that have taken the stand and the credibility thereof. What you're seeing on the screen right now is a reflection of the voices of the masses who are watching and are interested in this particular matter as it continues in our court. So a new witness is expected to take the stand perhaps on Monday when the trial resumes. So that means you and I will meet again right here on this very same chair for another riveting breakdown of the Senzo Mewa murder trial. Until then, happy Mother's Day and have a good one.